Good evening. Hello, and welcome to SPM the Society of Prop Managers webinar series for live theater prop professionals. I'm Ben Holman, SPM member, co-chair of the Education Committee, and props director at the Utah Shakespeare Festival. SPAM, short for the Society of Prop Managers, got to start back in 1994 when a small but mighty group of prop folks in the Midwest came together to tackle shared challenges and make sure props had a seat at the table alongside other production departments. Fast forward to today, and we're a thriving group of over 150 professional prop managers and educators from theaters, opera companies, and schools, all connected through an international network. We share resources, swap tips, troubleshoot problems, and support each other with everything from safety info to continuing education. Like our past webinars, tonight's session is Pay What You Can. Any donation goes directly to support these programs and our annual grants for early career prop professionals. If you're able to chip in, we'll drop the link in the chat. Every bit helps, and we're super grateful for your support. Just a heads up, live transaction is on for today's webinar, so you can follow along in real time. We're also recording our talk, and we'll share it later on our YouTube channel. Now it's time for the good part. In this follow-up to our March webinar about all things prop list, SPM member Kelly Mangan is joining us to dive into what happens after we have that prop list. Kelly is a member of the design and tech faculty at Bowling Green State University in Ohio, where she teaches scenic construction, props, scenic art, and stage management, because she has plenty of time. She also serves as a scenic designer for the department and the university's opera program. I also know Kelly from years and years ago when we both worked in Kentucky at different theaters. One of the first SPAM members to come from a theater for young audiences background, Kelly brings 18 years of experience upholstering couches and building dragons, sometimes for the same show. As we go along, feel free to drop your questions in the chat. We'll have time at the end to ask those questions to Kelly and get her information on those. So thanks for being here. And Kelly, take it away.
Awesome. Okay, let's see if I can actually take it away. Hi. Okay, somebody tell me if it all looks right.
Looks great.
Okay. So, hi, I'm Kelly. Great introduction from Ben. Actually, I worked with him also at the Utah Shakespeare Festival 1.5 years ago. He worked in the outdoor theater and I worked in the indoor theater. So I've got lots of crossover with Ben, which is pretty cool. I do have to say, so the prop list explained, those of you who saw the last Spaminar or have looked at it on YouTube, it's awesome. And I'm going to recap a little bit of it because I think that we can't talk about how to get started unless we talk about sort of our process of the list itself, because we have to keep going back to it. We can't just be like, here's my list and I'm done now making lists, because the list is just continual. So I may speed demon through all of these slides so that we have plenty of time for questions. And hey, spammers that are on with me, stop me if you have questions too. I don't have to be a through line here. So anyway, so the prop list is just the beginning. So this is the recap. Get the list, not somebody else's version of the list. Beware of the list from the back of the script, because it is not always the best version of what you're doing. You've got to talk to everybody involved. You've got to talk to the director. You've got to talk to all of the designers, because props is that lovely crossover land of sometimes we are creating a bouquet of flowers, and it's not just any bouquet of flowers, it has to go with the costume. And so we have to have conversations with the costume designer as well as the scenic designer, as well as the lighting designer, because I've put a whole lot of stuff out on stage before and gone, oh, that doesn't look quite right. I have already starting with the stories, at a theater that I worked at, 17 people walked on stage with a black umbrella. And I took a note every night, get that one that reads red off stage, because everybody knows that black is not black is not black is not black. And I was making the assumption that I had bought multiple black umbrellas from multiple places and that the blacks didn't match. Actually, they were under a red downlight. And so every night that I took one of the umbrellas out of the mix, the next night, the same thing happened. And I'm like, how is it that that red umbrella is back? And so you have to talk to the designers too, all of them. Script analysis, actual script analysis, there's no excuse to not do it. You have multiple readings. I had an algebra teacher in middle school that I loved. Some of us remember word problems. He used to say you have to read it, reread it, read it again until you actually can tell the story. And so that's how I look at reading a script. I can't just breeze through it and highlight the props and make a list from there. I have to understand what's going on. I have to understand the usage. And I've got to add in information from other things, from the conversations with the directors and the designers. Okay, that's enough of this little picture. Okay, this is where the mud story goes. That whole reading the script, I didn't listen to my own advice at a show here at Bowling Green State University, a show called A Perfect Wedding. And I walked into the very first production meeting, very convinced that I was ready to go, even though I hadn't read the script. And the very first thing the costume designer said to me was, what are we going to do about the mud? I'm like, oh, great. That is not the script to not have read. Because apparently in one of the scenes, they throw mud at each other repeatedly. And so I just tried my best to act like maybe we had some options, but I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea where the mud came from. And that was my lesson. I would never go into another production meeting without reading the script and really understanding the story. So there's the mud story. So gonna say this louder. Make sure you understand the play and the way that your company is doing it. Ben works at a Shakespeare festival, but not every Shakespeare is done the same way. So you can't look at the way that somebody else did it. You have to look at the way your company is going to do it. I like to say that as the prop master, you're not just a stuff getter. You are a collaborator, and unless you understand the play, you're not going to get the right stuff. You shouldn't have to ask questions about absolutely every prop that you're getting if you understand the play and the nature of the collaboration of the team. This last bullet point, dive into the show like you were directing it. Because if you can learn the show that well, then you can anticipate a whole lot more. Things won't surprise you when you find them added in the prop list. You can be like, yeah, I knew that was coming. And nothing will catch you off guard nearly as much as if you just read the play for what was in the script. So what is on the list? Okay, this is a little bit of back at the last webinar. We've got to make sure that we've got hand props, which also includes weapons and consumables, furniture and set dressing. Not a lot of people will remember the set dressing part because from that initial reading, you don't necessarily know that. That's why you have to talk to other people. You don't know what's going to go on that wall, but the designer does. You have to look for the things that they say and the things that they infer. One of my favorite assignments to give my students is to read The Importance of Being Earnest. And there's a couple of times when one of the guys, I don't know, Algernon, Jack, whatever, Ernest, they say things like, hand me one of those. Well, unless you're reading the script carefully, you won't know that it's hand me one of those. They're asking for a cigarette. And then if you've got some character asking for a cigarette, but given your time period, you also know that you need something to light it with, someplace to put it, potentially a cigarette case that it came out of. So it's not just a cigarette that goes on that prop list. It's all of the things that go around it. Ernest is a perfect example of, they have high English tea in Act Two. Well, what's high tea? Well, they might only touch the cups and the saucers and the teacups and the teapot and things like that. But if you don't have a full high English tea out there, somebody's going to write you a letter saying you didn't do it right. Along with the list, the things that you can ask yourself pretty easily is, can it be a real thing? Can I put a real teapot out on stage, or does it need to be somehow theatricalized? Is it theatricalized because of the style, or is it theatricalized because they might juggle with it? I don't know. You do Alice in Wonderland, you don't just go get a teapot from the Walmart and put it on stage. You're going to do something that's like spectacularly odd, and that's not going to be something that you can just go buy. You also have to ask yourself and the rest of the team, will it be used in a way that was not originally designed? Most of us have had the moment of we want to jump on that Victorian settee, and we have to stop ourselves from saying no. We have to say yes, and these are the ways that we can make that happen. And we also need to talk about time and labor and all of the rest of the resources. But the answer is not immediately no, but it is not going to be used the way that it was originally designed. And we got to know that off, right off the bat. We also have to know the size, the shape, the color, and the weight. The weight is actually more important than a lot of people think. I was doing an Anne of Green Gables a long, long time ago, and the right prop was a cast iron Dutch oven. And it was also the wrong prop because it was extraordinarily heavy once you got tomato soup in it. So the actress could not comfortably pick it up full of tomato soup and dish it out to everybody. And so something else had to be done. And we had to brainstorm together about what the appropriate prop would be that would be okay for her to handle. So now, okay, here's the box story. For anybody that saw the intro, it's like, here's the box story. You really do have to know how things are being used. For a while, I worked at a California theater. I'm not going to say where, but it wasn't Utah because that's in Utah. But my husband would come out and work for a week because he's a carpenter, and it would pay for his plane ticket, and we'd get to goof off in the evenings for a week. And he got out there, and first thing Monday morning, they were like, "Okay, so we need you to build a prop for this show. It needs to be a plywood box, 4 foot by 4 foot by 4 foot square." And so that, okay, pretty easy. Here you go. By the end of the day, it was done. That night in rehearsal, we got the note that, nope, it's too big. It wants to be 3 foot by 3 foot by 3 foot. So on Tuesday, he rebuilt the box to be 3 foot by 3 foot by 3 foot. Put that in rehearsal. That night, got the note back. Nope, that's also too big. So could it be 2 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot? So we built that one. And then, of course, the note came, it's too small, because the actor can't get inside of it for the lid to close. And we were like, so our bad. We didn't ask what you were doing with this box. And if we had known from the very beginning that an actor needed to, without a step into it and get out of it without a step. So obviously 4 foot's way too tall. 3 foot's pretty much too tall because that's not the size of anyone's inseam that I know. I'm short, but and 2 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot was too small for him to get all crouched in before the lid would close. So our bad because we didn't ask about the usage. They're bad because they didn't tell us what they were using it for. That's where the whole, you've got to communicate every single day about what the nature of the need is. They didn't just need a box. They needed a box that did a particular thing. So every list ends up getting another list. I like paper. Everybody at the last webinar, I want to be like them, because I want to have these wonderful Excel spreadsheets and Airtable spreadsheets. I do Google Docs most of the time, Google Sheets, for my stuff that I send to the stage managers. But for me, I like the paper scribble thing. There is something really satisfying about scratching off a note when it's done. I like scribbling it out. I don't want to do a Sharpie marker over the top of it because then it's gone. I want to be able to still read what was underneath it, but there's something very satisfying about the scribble thing. And this is something that I will make myself, usually I will redo it once every 3 days, but I do a to do and a to buy. we'll talk a little bit later about how that changes back and forth. I also do a who does what list when I'm working with a crew that is bigger than just me. A lot of times I work solo on a show, but sometimes I will work with a crew up to 6 or 7 people. And so being able to assign somebody to do the job on that spreadsheet is really good to do. You also need a budget list. Some companies that I've worked with have required a preliminary budget down to the materials, not just in general, this is how much the show's going to cost, but like this is how much I'm going to spend on foam. This is how much I'm going to spend on upholstery fabric. That's really hard. So that's another list that you will generate from your prop list. And you should always have in mind your budget in mind when you're doing your to do and to buy list, because the things will migrate back and forth. Just because you can pull something out of stock does not mean that it's ready to go, because you're probably going to have to buy supplies to modify it so that then it's, worthy of the show. So it goes from the to pull to work on, and then the to buy list gets, spray paint or something that you need to modify it with. In a priorities list, you need to have a general idea of the priorities of the show, both the director and the designers. You'll have a pretty good idea from your reading if you really thoroughly read the show and you're in tune with the show. But it's always appropriate to ask in a production meeting or even in a rehearsal what the top priorities are. What the top priorities are for rehearsal props and what the top priorities are for done stuff. One of the things, because it's sitting right here and I can just show you. So Nana over there, that was one of the first priorities. Oh, goodness, hold on. So Nana was one of the first priorities for our rehearsals for Peter Pan and Wendy. So Nana got done real early. So that we had enough time to do some modifications, because the puppeteer needed to be able to feel balance, feel whether or not, oh, goodness gracious, feel whether or not it was too heavy, figure out how to move the head comfortably. We ended up making some changes to the grip and all of that kind of stuff. If you're waiting to the last minute to get these things done, you don't have time to make them the right thing and do modifications to them. That's why the priorities list is good.
Kelly,
Yes.
real quick, because of the way you're screen sharing, we couldn't see Nana.
Oh,
If
no.
you
Okay.
stop
Hang
screen
on.
sharing,
I'll come back. I will stop screen sharing. Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, because see, I can't see what you guys see. So, oh, hold on. Water cup. There's Nana. That's Nana. So yeah, she was one of the very first things that we got done so that we could get her in rehearsal. Because the puppeteer for the show was not as savvy with puppeting as some people might have been, and so she was learning alongside of me, sort of showing her some tricks and tips, and also modifying Nana to be better for her because she was taller than me, so that was weird, and also her hand strength was different than mine, so I had to pay attention to what her needs were, in terms of the manipulation of Nana. She's cute, but if you can't use her right, then she doesn't work. So I'll go back. Oh, I think I'll go back to screen sharing. Thanks for stopping me, Ben.
no problem.
Jump in anytime. Really, I feel like I'm like talking to a void, but I know you people are out there. So, but still, you're not ready to start doing stuff yet. You've got your lists and stuff, and that's great. But okay, I'm gonna harp on this. You got to do some research. Um, your designers will give you some material references on things. Some will just give you verbal descriptions, and you've got to be able to run with it. Some will leave the props to you and they will just design the set. I have run into absolutely every kind of designer, ones that wanted to basically go with me to all of our warehouses to pick out all of the set dressing. Nothing went on that set unless they picked it out, all the way to the designers who will for a show that's literally a couple of sets of legs and an interesting platform. What the hand props are not important to them. It's like whatever they need in rehearsal, whatever they need for the show, that's fine. It doesn't matter as long as it stays in this time period. And I've had that as well. So that meant that I had to do the research and I had to go double checking with them. And sometimes they didn't want to have a conversation, but in order for me to do the right thing, I have to do the research. How do you do the research and why do you have to do the research? Well, okay. I love this slide. Okay. So theater recreates life, and unless you know about life, you can't get the right stuff. Um, some of the things that I have had to learn being a prop master is actually how do you spin wool. It's really hard to spin wool on stage, but you have to learn how to do it so that you can figure out how to fake it because if you try to spin wool on stage, it's going to break on you every single time. So I actually took a couple of spinning lessons and it was really fun. You learn how to card wool, you learn how to spin it and all of that kind of stuff. And it also raises the question immediately of how do we prick our finger on the spindle of a spinning wheel and die? Oh, Sleeping Beauty, because a spindle is only on one particular kind of spinning wheel. I love this stuff. Can we find a baby lamb for our production of Gypsy in July? The answer is no, because lambing season is not July. And by the time we get to July, baby lambs that are really, really cute when they're little are bigger and not so cute anymore. And I found that out when I was about 20 and said, sure, I'll keep the baby lamb in my backyard. And yeah, baby lamb, big giant sheep by the end of the 3 month summer stock run. Um, what kind of China pattern would a middle income family have? Very rarely are you going to find a designer that's going to dictate your China pattern, but you got to know what the right one is. You can't have something that's not in the right period. What do professional roller skates look like? Because they're carrying them in and the costumes aren't doing them. So look it up. They don't want to look like something that somebody bought from Walmart. They need to look professional. And then this one was one of my favorites. Anybody that ever does the seagull will have to learn how someone takes snuff because they take snuff while they're playing lotto, which is also a game that you have to learn how to play in order to do it on stage. I love research because that's the candy of all of the stuff that we do. It's like, why do we pick this stuff? I'm a research nerd. I love history and I love research. Um, but how do you research? Get out from behind the computer. The computer is not always right. Go to the library and look at books and ask the reference librarians. They love this kind of stuff. As a matter of fact, all of the spammers that went to Pittsburgh last year, we went to a library and we got to talk to a research librarian and an archivist about some of the picture files that they had of old department stores. And that firsthand reference material is just unbelievably exciting to look at. Because I'm a history nerd. Talk to the people that work at antique stores because they know how things work. They know histories of things. They know if this is potentially the right time period for you. Meander the aisles of the hardware store. The crotchety old guy that works there, usually his name's Al. He'll help you solve a lot of problems because you don't necessarily know the products that are out there. Get from behind the computer and talk to actual people. Um, and then this was the other thing. Directors and designers rely on us to help use the things that we find. So like learning how to spin. I went into rehearsal and I coached it. It was a little dramaturgical, but at the same time, if I had to figure it out for props, then why shouldn't I share it with the director in terms of how to make how to have the actress look a little bit more like she really truly is spinning, rather than totally faking it out. Not everything can be learned from a YouTube video. a lot, but not everything. So now we're going to start. We got to have our rehearsal props. Here's the thing. Don't stress about rehearsal props. Because half the time they don't get touched until the actors are off book because they don't have any place to put them because they've got their book. But the minute they're off book, you need to get something, and sometimes it can literally be a piece of 2x4 that will stand in for the thing that it is the thing until you get something that is a little bit more like the real thing. Because the ideal rehearsal prop will be the same weight, the same size, the same shape, but it just will be potentially unbreakable and repeatable. But sometimes you don't have enough time and you've got to put something in there. Because you've got to have something or they will start miming stuff and then they don't know where they set that mimed cup down. So that's impossible for your stage managers to do your prop tracking because you're like, well, wait a minute, 5 seconds ago you had a cup. Yeah, well, where did you put it? I don't know because I was miming the cup and so it disappeared from my hands and now I don't know where it is. What show props do the actors need to handle ASAP? Because the sooner you get them to them, the sooner you'll know whether or not it's actual approved for the show. The last thing you want is for a week before tech, 6 or 7 things are not appropriate anymore because you've got them two of them too late. This is an important one, and I have to smile when I read this one. Know your working style. Do your priorities the way that you need to do your priorities. Start with the stuff that you don't like. Start with the stuff that you're going to put off and the hard stuff that's going to take longer. Because if you start with the easy stuff, then you're going to be scrambling at the end. You can do a couple little things that are easy in and around the big hard stuff. But if you've got to upholster a couch, you better start it now and not wait until 2 days before tech, because then you're going to be panicked and you won't do the best job. So you start with rehearsal props, then you get to the show priorities, talking to the director, talking to the designers, and then your priorities, knowing the way that you work. I like to talk about the hierarchy of gathering because not every theater has a ton of money. This is the way I learned how to shop when I was a kid because first we always went to like the thrift stores, but for props, the first thing we have to do is say, do we have it? I have done plenty of shows where I needed a violin, and without thinking about it, I immediately go directly to like the music department and say, hey, can I borrow a violin? And then I go to put the violins away and find out that I had 4 already and I didn't need to do that. So knowing your stock and going to your stock first, see what you can pull and see what you can use exactly the way it is. What can you pull that then needs to be modified? And then that's where you update your list and say, okay, great. It comes off of the pull list because I got it now. It's on a table over there, but I need to still do stuff to it. It needs to be shorter. It needs to be hemmed, whatever. And make sure that all of the supplies that you need to do that job to the thing you pulled go on your buy list. What can you thrift? Around here, we've got extra special great thrifting, not just from things like the Goodwill, but we also have several kinds of restore stores. There's the Habitat for Humanity restore, but then there's also a campus restore. And so a lot of things, I will go there first because it's either extraordinarily inexpensive or the campus restore is free. So anytime that I need like office supplies, I go there first because it's all a donation basis. So yeah, it's all free. And then what can you buy used online? All of that is going to start using your budget to the best of its ability. Be very careful about purchasing on eBay or Facebook Marketplace, especially if you're working with a company that is state supported. With the university, I have to go through another person before I can buy on eBay, and I can't bid on anything. It has to be a buy it now. And then on Facebook Marketplace, there's a whole different way that I have to purchase, but I can usually make the argument of the table that I want that's $10 that is literally down the road 10 miles is going to be more beneficial for me to buy than to go to a furniture store, because most of the time it's not even available at a furniture store because I'm looking for something that's a different time period. But yeah, that hierarchy of gathering is very helpful because you start with the absolute cheapest thing. Um, Maybe the thing that you have in stock isn't quite right, but you can make it right. Um, Maybe changing the knobs on on a small side table. If you change the knobs on the drawers, then it's suddenly right. You make the stain a little bit darker. Try to use what you already have, and then follow that hierarchy. Um, Nobody can go too far without saying that there's a little bit of a problem with renting and buying, vice versa. um, there's a couple of spammers that I know have zero room for storage. And so their rules are a little bit different. So depending on where you're working, whatever kind of company you're working with, if you're working with a community theater that has no storage potential, everything goes into somebody's garage. You might borrow or rent, because if there's no storage, there's no storage. Um, think about other uses that you might have for things that you buy. Um, for me, like it says here, a good flameless candle will always be worth the money because I will use it over and over and over in different shows. But if it's not a reusable item, if it's very specific, then I will try to either rent it or borrow it, rather than have it forever. But if I have it forever, if it's the only way to get it, there's times that I've asked if I can resell it. We did High School Musical at a smaller company, not here at BGSU, because you can't sell state property. You can only auction it off. But at another company that I worked for, we needed two basketball goals for High School Musical, and nobody had the money for them. So we bought them anyway. A board member put them on their credit card, and then they auctioned them off at the close of the show. So the company recouped all of their money. I know that when Ben worked at ATL in Louisville, there was always a prop auction, because that's a good way to get rid of some of the very specific things that you're not going to use again. And patrons that came to see the show really like to own stuff that they saw in a show. They think that's pretty cool. Beg, borrowing, stealing. This is the thing I've always said to myself, that if you have a slight inkling that what you're going to borrow is not going to be treated lovingly, don't do it. If the person that you borrowed it from is going to be devastated if it goes away, don't do it. If you have the money and it's not a emotionally attached thing for the person that you're borrowing it from, say out loud, if this is broken or damaged, I will pay for it, but I want to make sure that it's not going to make you sad if it's gone. That's when you can think about borrowing, because you never know what's going to happen on stage. And it's not because actors are meaning to do anything wrong with it. Sometimes accidents happen. So don't borrow that Jewel tea set, if you don't think that it's going to go back to its original owner. So making stuff. This could be a whole other spaminar. It's like how to make stuff. You have to figure out how to even begin. But these are a couple of little rules that I keep for myself. Do not hot glue what you could sew. If you don't know how to sew, figure it out. Hand sewing is not hard. Machine sewing isn't hard either, but don't hot glue. I'm tired of seeing globs of hot glue on fabric. If it needs carpentry and you don't know how, ask the scene shop. for help or advice in the moment, but then don't rely on them forever. Figure it out. You take the time to learn. Um, Break it down into manageable parts. I mean, so Nana, that was a pretty big build. But first I knew that she needed to be kind of a suitcase before she was a dog. And so I had to figure out what her handle was first. So that's the first manageable part. What does the handle want to look like? And then what do you decorate the handle to look like? A dog. But breaking it down into manageable parts makes it not nearly as scary. Sometimes simple is best. Don't overthink it. I was doing a version of the Diary of Anne Frank, and it was going to go on tour, and we needed to snap green beans. And snapping green beans all year long would have been really expensive, and it would have meant a trip to the grocery store for the crew and making sure that there was fresh green beans, which might not have been. So we concocted this idea that we were going to do green beans out of green wax. And they could be melted back down and put back into their molds and used over and over and over again. Well, so when I said that in a production meeting, and everybody was really excited that this was going to be really cool because it was going to make that snap and they were going to be green and they weren't going to be gross. Then the director asked me, well, what are we going to do about the potatoes? Because they count potatoes. And I said, we're going to use potatoes because potatoes aren't going to go bad. They can, be sort of shoved in a box and left for a while, and they're not going to sprout for probably a while. And they're available at absolutely every grocery store. So we just used potatoes. There was no reason to try to do fake potatoes or let alone plastic potatoes, because if they fell off the table, then, then they've got this plastic potato bouncing around. So yeah, simple is best. Don't overthink it. Walk the aisles of the craft store and the hardware store. I have found the best stuff just walking around going, I wonder what I could use that for. At Stage One in Louisville, Children's Theater, one of the shows that I did needed a giant glass of milk. And I mean giant, like 4 foot tall. And so they also wanted a bendy straw to go into the 4 foot tall glass of milk. Well, PVC pipe was obviously the answer for the straw part, but the bendy part, what was that? Well, the answer was in the plumbing section, because you can get sort of pipe that is segmented like a bendy straw that you can go tunk, 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 and actually bend like a bendy straw. So yeah, by wandering the aisles of the hardware store, I found the perfect thing. And then yeah, you can Google it. And this is also one of my favorite things. Dumpster diving is fun. We should definitely do it. That doesn't mean that we actually have to dumpster dive, but we have to think about trash to treasure. People have to be able to see the possibilities in everything, because I don't know if you can tell, but that chainsaw attached to his hand for Evil Dead the Musical is made from a Tide bottle. Yeah, don't overthink it. So making stuff and keeping track. You've got to, hopefully, Ben, is that all? Is my head in front of the rehearsal report production meeting thing?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. Well, I'll weave back and forth. Keeping track, you've got to make sure that your stage managers are talking to you through rehearsal reports. And I will say, I actually love random hallway chats, and on purpose chats with the stage managers on a daily basis, because sometimes it's not enough to put it in the rehearsal report. Like right here, I don't know if you could see it, but the cornflakes box, cereal box is coming loose off its board. There is a show called Swimming in the Shallows, and there's a scene where she's having a nightmare about cereal. And these cereal boxes are painted neon colors, and in black light, they're attacking her. And so there's 4 different guys out on stage with cereal boxes on sticks, sort of tormenting her in black light. And one of them was coming off of its stick. And it wasn't just coming off of its stick. It had been sort of impaled through the rest of the box because somebody sat down on it. So that note wasn't quite right. And without going and looking and having a conversation with the stage manager, I didn't really know what was going on. I could have fixed it, but then we also had to fix the situation in which it got broken so that we could make sure that they didn't get broken on a regular basis. We have shop meetings with the scene shop and the prop shop to make sure that we're talking about our projects on a daily basis as well. Where are we in the projects? Do we need help? Do we need, is something like halfway done? And what we really need is a director or a designer visit to make sure that we're on the right track. Sometimes we'll even organize a show and tell into the rehearsal hall and say, you know, during the first 5 minutes when you're doing warm-ups, can I bring this thing to the actor that's going to work on it? It's not ready for her yet. I'm not ready to give it to you in rehearsal, but can we have a little meet and greet? And then that way I can go back and make some different changes to it based on her response. That's just better than keeping on, and then giving it to them. And then they're like, no, that's not what we thought it was going to be. A little check-in is really, really good. Also, yeah, production meetings, got to go, got to have them, got to talk in them, got to say the things that you need to say and ask the questions you need to ask. Oh, look at that. Stage manager chats daily. I forgot that this slide was in here. So you got to let them know what you gave them. You can't just go drop off some stuff at the rehearsal hall and let them just guess what it's for. You got to put little post-it notes on it or something that says, you know, this block, this 2x4 block is really a cell phone for right now, but I don't have one. So that's what it's going to be for a while. You have to remember that the stage managers are your information pipeline. If they realize that they're your eyes and ears in the rehearsal hall and they're kind of doing the whole, well, if the prop master was sitting here, they would be writing this down. Then they can write it down and give it to you in the rehearsal report. They'll also be the sort of the person that stops somebody from doing something really dumb. I have in places worked with directors that are like, yeah, try something, see how that works. And then, you know, randomly an actor will throw a pewter goblet against the wall. And so the stage manager will very calmly write down the pewter goblet will get thrown. And also the pewter goblet will hit the wall. And then it becomes a conversation of, is that really necessary? Well, if it is, then we've got to look at the wall differently and the pewter goblet differently, and we have to keep everybody safe and keep things from getting destroyed because this is going to obviously happen every other night. But the answer isn't immediately no. If that's what you want to do, then we have to look at a way to make that happen. Yeah, they'll give you a heads up if they want to plop on the Victorian settee. They will probably also tell the actor in the moment, hey, don't plop on that quite yet because I don't think it's made for that. So we'll find out if you can, because that kind of communication is what we need. They'll also warn you what they haven't picked up for the last 3 nights in rehearsal and probably is going to get cut because nobody's using it anyway, before you work on the real thing. Relish your role in telling the story. I think too many times, I don't think, not too many times, often, every once in a while, we get bogged down in our jobs and we get bogged down in the fact that we've got a list that we have to do. And I have to remind myself of this same thing at least once a show, that I am helping an actor find their character sometimes, because sometimes that's what they need. You know, a little picture of you got to have a pillow to hug moment, or that dreaded hanky. They add a hanky because somebody needs business with it. And I couldn't figure out how. I don't know why. I was going to crash my computer if I tried to put the label on the guy leaning on the broom. But 9 times out of 10, you get a broom added to a scene, and it's because somebody needs to hold on to something. An actor needs to feel grounded. It's an unexperienced actor, and they're flailing their arms. They look really uncomfortable up there. We can't be knee-jerk reaction saying, well, I don't have time to do that, or, you know, can't add that now. It's past the drop ad deadline. if it's going to help the story, if it's going to help the actor, it is our role to help that happen. Um, Sometimes a prop will help the actor do their job better. But the wrong prop will get in their way. So, like that cast iron Dutch oven, I had to change it because that weight got in the way of telling the story. Because in the end of the day, that's what we're here for, is to help tell the story with the stuff. So, and props have feelings too. There is no, all joking aside, you have to treat your props nicely or they'll turn on you. Um, it's not always about being, I hate that I'm kind of reading this to you, but you can't stack stuff on each other because something's going to break. Your crew has to treat the props with respect. You have to treat the props with respect, and then that way the actors will treat the props with respect. That's how things last. That's how things stay in good shape. The same rule goes for costumes, and we've heard this probably more often with costumes, is that you can't just throw your costume on the floor. You have to pick it up. You have to hang it up. You have to hang up the pants correctly. The same thing with props. They have to have a place to go, a place to be safe, and a way to be stored so that they are just as perfect can be for the very next show. Okay, last slide. Attitude is everything. It takes a while sometimes to remind ourselves that we're making stuff, but we're making stuff for this big collaborative effort called the play. And if you're curious and you are determined to learn as you're challenged and do these hard things that you maybe have never done before. I'd never made a Nana before. I'd made other puppets, but I'd never made a Nana. So did it mean that I couldn't do it? No, it just meant that I broke it down into smaller steps, things that I understood how to do, and did it. Did I have to do some things over? Yep. Did I get a little annoyed with myself every once in a while? Yep. Did I carve her face 3 times? Yep. Because the first time she looked like a bear. But just because you have to do it over does not mean that you are a failure. It's just that it's all part of the process. Your deadlines are the hardest part. That's the hardest part about being an artist, is because we don't just get to work on things as we want to. We have deadlines to meet. You have to speak up when you're over your head. And you have to remember that we're telling the story together, all of the people in your team, and we're all doing the best we can. So that's my spiel.
Awesome. That was great. There's a couple questions in the chat. If anybody else has any, feel free to throw them in there. The first one
I'm going to stop sharing so that I can look at everybody now. Okay, awesome.
the first is, how do you coordinate everything if the designer needs to approve everything? I feel like I
Oh,
have trouble with this, and it makes it hard to work on your own time if you're sending too many emails, etc.
absolutely. One of the things that I do when a designer has to approve everything is that I just take lots and lots of pictures and I send lots and lots of emails. And I try to do it individually and say, okay, so let's talk about couches. Like if we're looking for a couch, I need the blue couch. Okay, do you want this blue couch, this blue couch, or this blue couch? And that's the only thing I will send in that email. But there's the next thing. Well, what about the throw pillows? Well, okay, here are the throw pillows. Which ones do you approve? And I ask them to give me to rank. I like this one best, or this one best, or like none of them at all. And we're going shopping now. So it is a lot of emailing. Yeah. Oh, hey, Patrick. I only text the designers that I have worked with personally before and have a relationship with that I know that they would want to text. I would not, it's kind of like cold calling. It's like I'm not going to cold text anybody. Also working with directors that are also professors, you don't know if they're in class. So texting might not actually get you any information any faster. If you're working, like if I was doing something in a summer stock, heck yeah. Because if it's a time frame thing, I need to know right now. I'm standing at the antique store. Do I buy this one or do I not buy this one? I would definitely text them.
Cool. Patrick, when you were talking about violins, Patrick made a comment just, that confirm if the instrument needs to be playable, if it is a prop instrument or a played instrument, that becomes a huge issue. I'm dealing with violins right now in a show.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
um, yeah, Patrick also said we were talking about donating or borrowing stuff. If a patron donates a piece to you, I always tell them very clearly, I am not a museum. You may see
Right.
the arms of this chair in a future production, not the whole chair. Like I'm going to use it until it falls apart and I have pieces. But you may see it painted pink or maybe reupholstered.
Hmm.
I'm not a museum. You can't come back in a year and say, "Where is this piece?" You don't
Yeah.
want to get that angry email like, "What did you do to that antique that I gave you?" Like, props is where antiques go to die. So just make sure whenever you get stuff donated that people understand what they're doing.
Yes, absolutely. And sometimes I've had to turn people away because it's like, okay, you think that I might be able to use this thing, but I also know that I have 14 other of this exact same thing and I can't use it. And thank you very much. But you might want to go to the Goodwill or Habitat Restore or any of the other. We have a Deacon shop that is a place that is actually it's a pay what you can thrift store here in town. So I give people a whole list of other places that they could potentially take their stuff to if it's something that I know I have no room for in stock. Like like the perfect antique refrigerator that I would love to keep. It's like I can't because there's one show in a lifetime that I can use this wonderful refrigerator for, and I don't have enough room in stock.
Right. Okay, if you have any other questions, throw them in the chat. We're getting to the end here. Patrick always encourages directors to drop by the shop to see progress or to, check in on questions and stuff. If you're in the same building as the rehearsal halls and things, that's a super great way to make sure that communication is continuing to happen. And both Patrick and I mentioned when you were talking about prop ad deadlines and things like that. Like we cut it here at Utah because I felt like it was a hindrance to the storytelling aspect. Like if
Yeah.
they want to add something late in the process, it has to be a conversation. Do we have the resources? Do we have the time? Is it something that we have in stock? Which Patrick kind of brings up, if it's something we have in stock and it does take a lot of work to modify it for your show, that makes it super easy to say yes. If not, like how crucial is it to the storytelling? And is there a compromise where something similar would work or whatever? But I always felt like having just a random date in the calendar where you can't anything after this date like doesn't help with the storytelling aspect of what we're trying to do. Um,
Especially when it potentially is literally in the basement. And it's like, just ask me, yeah. I used to say if you're going to add something after the deadline, it better come with chocolate. But now we have very few deadlines except for large pieces of furniture that we know we couldn't just pull this out of nowhere. It's like we can't add a grand piano at the last minute.
right. And then I want to see if I can pin myself for just a second. Okay, so I don't know if you can see this. Um, so we created these a couple years ago, and this is how we communicate with stage managers now. So every prop that goes to the rehearsal gets one of these tags. We circle at the top whether it's rehearsal or a show prop. And if we don't know if they're going to like it as a show prop, we'll put a question mark after show prop. We list the show, the prop number, because all of our props have numbers. It's one of the ways we communicate with stage management. The description. So if it's, the pewter mug, it'll say pewter mug. And then the notes are, we need feedback on this, or how many do you need, or here are three options, or whatever. So when the stage managers get in the room, they can actually, because our time schedules are so different. We work from 8 to 6 or whatever, and they're working, noon to midnight. When they walk in the room, each show has a basket full of all their new stuff. They can go through and switch out if it's a show prop versus a rehearsal prop or things like that. And these tags have become super valuable in that communication process and it's been really, really helpful.
That's awesome when you know that you don't have time to interface because so many times there's so much more information that you need somebody to have about this thing that you just handed them. Yeah.
Awesome. And a
Cool.
bunch of other people use them as well, which is great.
Yeah.
Um, cool. Any last questions from anybody? Awesome. I'm supposed to read something else. I don't think I have it open. Well, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. And Kelly, oh wait, No, there's one. You mentioned couches and pillows and set dressing, things you never pick up. But we have these as under the purview of the set designer, not props. Is this unusual?
Oh, I think that's very unusual because then I, hmm, that's really odd because I would more than likely have said that, yeah, the furniture is definitely a prop, but I gotta say that's normal for me and that's normal for a lot of the people in spam. But at the same time, depending on where you're working, if the scenic designer is actually also getting stuff for you, then that might be a thing that they take on for themselves. Sort of like a costume designer sometimes will do all of the jewelry themselves. Yeah, it really does depend on the company.
Yeah, it's really true. Um, Awesome. Well, thanks, Kelly, for a great presentation, and thanks everyone for being here. In the chat, there's a couple of notices. Please fill out the response survey that you'll be getting either through the link there or you'll get an email. We're trying to make sure that these topics are things that you want to hear about and attend. So we'll take your feedback on that. Also, if you're interested in joining SPAM, please fill out. There's a link there for our membership, and our membership committee will get to you. And yeah, thanks for coming. These will continue next month. I'm giving a little recorded tour of the prop shop and the prop warehouse at the Shakespeare Festival. And then the month after that, we're talking about oh my gosh, neurodiversity and mental health in props and ways to help deal with some of that kind of stuff. And there'll be more topics coming after that. So thanks everyone for attending, and we'll see you at the next Spam.